All right, MYB community, thank you so much for coming back. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. Champ Ron here, your host. So glad that you could join us here for another episode of the Minding Your Business podcast. Subscribe, 5-star, wherever you get your pods, particularly on Apple. That helps us get our content out to more people and share great content and background like we have today. With my guest, Mr. Colin McIntosh with Sheets and Giggles that we're going to talk about on today. So, Colin, thank you so much for joining, taking the time out of your busy schedule
Very busy.
get with
As
us.
you can see from the tank, and yeah, I'm calling in from South Florida, where I've been quarantined with my family, and
Oh, yeah. Of all the worst places to be, South Florida.
awful
Yeah, man.
place.
Oh, man. I know
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
struggling through
I
the
know.
nice
Yeah.
weather. And
No, it's been great. I'm believe it or not, this is as tan as I get. So this is about this is good. It's as good as it's gonna get. So yeah, but no, I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate you having me. And
yeah.
thanks for letting me just kind of be myself in the interview and
Yeah.
not have to
Oh,
get too
that's
formal
what
with
we
it.
do here with the
Yeah,
MYB podcast, man. There's
yeah,
nothing good. There's no one like yourself. You're the best you that'll ever exist, and that's what I always share with people. So,
yeah.
Colin, let's dive right in, man. Tell us who Colin McIntosh is and how you got to where you are.
Well, it's nice that I've been quarantining with family, because it's nice for me to think about like kind of where I'm from and why I am who I am and that sort of thing. I feel like a lot of people have been doing a lot of introspection in the last couple months, being quarantined and thinking about their lives and that sort of thing. So I'm from South Florida. I grew up in a nice suburban neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale. I went to school at Emory University in Atlanta.
Okay.
My first job, I went to the business school there, and my first job was at a hedge fund in Connecticut called Bridgewater Associates, which is the world's largest hedge fund, about
Yeah.
170 billion under management.
Yep. Absolutely.
I got fired from that in about 5 months.
Okay.
And this is where the formative stuff starts to happen. Became a recruiter for the third-party recruiting firm that actually hired me there, which was ironic because I was recruiting for them and for other folks, and in the banking system and then startups. And one of my clients was a startup client in Seattle that I really enjoyed, a B2B software startup. And so I hired myself into an open business development role there.
There you
Uh,
go.
I moved out to Seattle in 2014, spent 2 years there. And
Yeah.
then
Love Seattle.
oh, great, my favorite city in the country. And then I moved from Seattle to Denver in January 2016, so just over 4 years now, for an opportunity with a company that I helped to co-found with my friends that got into a program called Techstars, for folks listening who are familiar with Techstars, big global accelerator.
Yeah.
And then in September 2017, even though we had raised millions of dollars and had nationwide retail distribution, unfortunately, we had to lay everybody off, myself included, at 1 p.m. on a Monday. And 3 weeks later, I founded Sheets and Giggles, and it's now been nearly 3 years since I founded the company. And it's no pun intended, it's been a dream come true. We sell bed sheets,
Sure. Yeah.
obviously.
Of course. Yeah.
And so we make sustainable bedding out of a material called lyocell, which is a fabric made from eucalyptus trees. And so our material is actually softer than cotton. It's more breathable. It's more cooling, more moisture wicking. But it's also very sustainable. We use about 96% less water than typical cotton sheets in our production. And no insecticides, no pesticides. Cotton uses about 20% of the world's insecticides by itself as a crop. A lot of people don't know
Wow.
that. Yeah,
Wow.
and so we've been in business for almost 3 years, and we've shipped tens of thousands of units and have 3,000 reviews now, and we've also raised millions of dollars. Though that's never been the focus of this company. It's been very, very revenue first and profit driven,
Sure.
to build a sustainable business model. And we get to do a lot of good too. In terms of who I am, I think the ambition piece is equally important as the empathy piece, and that's something I've given a lot of thought to lately. And our company throughout this crisis has helped where we can. We've donated $40,000 in cash to COVID-19 relief in the state of
Yeah. I read
Colorado.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, we donated 20% of our revenue for about 30 days, and that ended up
Wow.
being a really nice chunk of change. And I saw a lot of people doing like 5% of profit or like whatever. I was like, just, instead of 20% off or whatever, just we'll give 20% to
Right.
this one. And then we also donated hundreds of sheet sets to Denver area homeless shelters because they were building these, I'm very proud of this actually, these respite motels to isolate symptomatic individuals from the general population
Sure.
in these shelters, because otherwise they would infect more people, and then that in turn would spread the disease
Spread.
throughout the city. So
Sure.
we donated hundreds of sheet sets to outfit these isolated motels. And then we've also donated, I think, maybe 5 or 6 dozen sheet sets to nurses and doctors and folks that their friends have posted some love for them on social media and tagged us, and we send them a set for free. And it's just been really,
That's awesome.
yeah, it's been the last 2 months, I think, have been my favorite of the company, despite all the difficulties on the back end. So
Sure.
that's me in a nutshell, and I'm founder and
Yeah.
CEO of the company. So
There you go. And I love that. Definitely shout out to you and your team for your fiduciary duty and being supportive of people during this pandemic, Colin, man.
thanks,
That's
man.
awesome. I love to hear that. And for such a young company, there are companies that have been around for hundreds of years that are getting involved, to that
so
level, which is
so
you
it's
know,
funny, the Colorado COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund. It was started by Governor Jared Polis and Mile High United Way. And I got a phone call like 2 weeks ago from Mile High United Way,
yeah,
and they were like, so we were going down our list of company donors, and we saw like Comcast, $100,000, like, AT&T, Denver Broncos, like 50 grand. And
yeah.
we saw Sheets and Giggles with like 40 grand. And then they were like, can you tell us a little bit about,
My
about your
shit's giggles,
company?
right.
What you're doing? And I was cracking up. I was
Right.
like, yeah, and so we've become a pretty good mainstay in the Denver community pretty quickly, which I'm very, very proud of. Just the way that we've been able to quickly come up and become this fairly well-known consumer brand in the state. And I think that because we've always put funny first, and
Yeah.
then sustainable and positive second. Now I feel like the brand's undergoing a bit of an evolution with the COVID-19 situation, where the helpful positive side of the company and the empathy that I think everybody at the company has,
Yeah.
which is a core trait that I try to hire for.
Sure.
That I think that we just went into overdrive in terms of how can we help, and it's just naturally kind of like brought the company into the conversation in a lot of ways that have been very positive for people hearing about us for the first time in this very helpful context. And
Sure.
it's great, because the reason I founded the company is this space is so homogenous and so boring. I mean,
It
Bed Bath and
is.
Beyond, Brooklyn,
Yeah. It's very
Terrace,
stale.
oh my God, these
Yeah.
companies bore me to death. And so it's not, it's so
Right.
it's nice to be like a funny, ridiculous company that's also making an impact and being able to be who we are. And um you know uh the sheets have always been like a vehicle for me,
Hmm.
not necessarily the end, but just the means to the end. And the end has always been doing good and helping others and having fun, and that's, I think, something that I feel very accomplished in. So I appreciate the kind words, really, I do.
Yeah, absolutely, Colin. And one of the things I hear with what you're speaking of is the culture that you set there with your organization, and how that permeates. You mentioned about the people that you look to hire. Even, man, that you look for that as a trait. It reminds me of something Mark Cuban said once with the Dallas Mavericks, where I think there was a certain book. I can't remember the name of the book, but there's a certain book that speaks to, like, and I'll get into this in a second because you and I were talking offline about this, but it talks about kind of rework. I think it's called Rework is the name
Mm,
of the book. And
hmm
it's about, kind of tossing all these old dogmatic kind of views about the office space and how productivity is handled, and this mindset of how culture is permeated from leadership and that sort
mm,
of thing. And so Mark Cuban was quoted as saying that if he had to pick between a candidate to hire that had an MBA or who had read that book, he would go 100% with anybody who had read that book over having an MBA. So so for some people that might be a little far-fetched, but
No,
for
no,
him,
I think
it made total sense.
it's so I feel like you hire everybody. So I used to be a recruiter, right? So
Yeah.
I did that for about a year and a half, and I actually, weirdly enough, I have if anybody out there is searching for a job, I have the all-time or second all-time top post on the jobs subreddit. So if you go to reddit.com/r/jobs and
Yeah.
you search top all time, is my resume post. I made a post about resumes. It's been shared like 2 million times,
Oh,
gone
God.
super viral.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I think a lot of people are saying like, I saw your resume template in this job the other day and stuff. And
Right.
and and it's interesting because I think about like hiring principles a lot in my own company as well as like in companies I've been in the past. I think there's three things that people hire on, whether they realize it or not, and that's values, abilities, and skills. And
Hmm.
companies that hire explicitly on those three values, I think, do a better job of hiring than ones that hire implicitly on them, where it's like kind of in the back of their mind, but they don't hone in on it.
Yeah.
And where you get into trouble is where you hire a lot on skills, but you don't hire a lot on abilities or values. And so values are things that like very rarely, if ever, change.
Right.
Abilities can change over time with hard work and education,
Sure.
and struggle and failure. And then skills are things that if you have the right values and the right abilities, you can build the right skills. I mean, I hired a guy
Sure.
a year ago named Carl, who I love to death, who, he was a 23-year-old kid when I hired him, and he maybe was a year out of school. He had just gotten
Yeah.
let go from another company at Techstars because they couldn't pay him.
Yeah.
And he came to me and he was like, "Hey man, I really want to stay in Techstars. I really want to be with a startup. I want to work hard." And he's a smart kid. He's a really hard worker. He's a good person. He really gives a shit.
Yeah.
and
There
and
you go.
so I basically, for the first few months, he was mostly doing whatever we needed to on odds and ends on the marketing side, but he's really applied himself, and now he's our lead graphic designer, video editor, photo editor, and does all of our social media management. And he's just been a really, really stellar addition to the team. And it took him probably 3 or 4 months to really grow into a role, and then a few months later to really apply himself into it. But I think if you hire on values and abilities, which is I think what Mark Cuban's talking about on the values piece, you're gonna
Sure.
you're gonna
Yeah.
have more success than failure.
No doubt about it. And so, Colin, as you started the company, what are some, what are one or two obstacles that you faced? Obviously, you've hired teammates, you've got other leadership there within your organization. Talk about some of those early days. What were some of the obstacles that you faced that you guys had to kind of hurdle over?
I think the biggest core obstacle is that I started a company based off a pun. So
Mm.
I was so
Yeah,
getting
I can
taken
see
getting
that.
taken getting taken seriously was fairly difficult. And my last company before this, the one that I co-founded with or not, I was on the founding team. I wasn't technically a co-founder. It was a very serious company. It was about fighting sexual assault and violence, and we had a wearable tech product that would do just that. And we
Sure.
we sold it at Brookstone and Target and HSN and QVC, and we were a very more serious company. And so I went from that, where I couldn't really be as creative as I like to be, to Sheets and Giggles, which was the polar opposite. It was still the sustainability mission and the altruistic piece, but completely different brand voice, completely different company, completely different space. And so I told a few people about it, and the number one response I got was like, one of my best friends, a guy named Paul, who actually ended up investing in the company. I told him about this like maybe a week before I incorporated it,
Yeah.
and his response was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like he was that was his response, and he was like
Right.
Sheets and Giggles. He's like, "A bet, dude. What do you were just in?" He's like telling me
Right.
all the things I should be doing, and I said, "Look, man, I really like this idea. I really like the space. I really like the creativity in front of me with it." And I
Yeah.
said, I'm gonna do it. And then his next response was like, "Well, then
All
I
right. What
want
the
to
hell?
invest."
Yeah.
And yeah, and so he gave me one of my first $5,000 checks, and it just because he knew who I was, and he was excited to kind of just work with me on whatever it was I wanted to do, which was really a really nice nice thing. But in any case, that was a big one, getting taken seriously. And so I knew basically I had to get this thing off the ground revenue funded. I knew that I was not going to be able to raise significant amounts of capital right away. I was a first time founder, first time CEO. I hadn't had any success before. I had a strong network, but I didn't have anyone that I could go to that would just, give me $1 million the next day.
Yeah.
And I did I pulled together 5 or 6 people, about 6 people in my immediate network, friends, family, people like Paul that trusted me and knew me very deeply.
Sure.
And I pulled together $60,000. I invested, I think 25 of my own money in the initial pool, and,
Sure.
had a little, egg to kind of work with. But basically the goal was to do a big crowdfunding campaign. And so that was my number one priority, and my number one biggest challenge was, how am I going to make $100,000 to go to market on a crowdfunding campaign? And so from January 2018 to April 30th, 2018, all I did was prepare for our crowdfunding campaign on May 1st, 2018, 2 years ago now this month.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing $284,000 crowdfunded on IndieGoGo,
Wow.
on a $25,000 budget. And
Yeah, I was gonna say, so with your budget, did you do like a lot of video, and what did you do to kind of play that up? Because I know a lot of people use those sites, and I have too. I've got a personal
yeah,
story with them. But did you invest a lot in kind of video,
no, so
presentation type deal, or
yes
with
and
that?
no. I mean, I advise people to work for a number of years before they start their own company. I think it's really, really, really hard to start a company as a 22, 23, 24-year-old that, may have a lot of work ethic and ambition and intelligence and skills, but
Sure.
doesn't have the network that I think is required to actually start something with a little more ease. So
Sure.
I went to my network. I asked for photographers, videographers that people would recommend. I found a photographer who did an all-day shoot for us for $500.
Wow.
I know, really, really great rate. I found a videographer that is one of my good friends now, who, did our IndieGoGo video for a $3,000 flat fee, everything included,
Wow.
lights and equipment, very professional job. I wrote the script myself and got all the props myself, went to JCPenney, got everything. I got pajama sets for like $8,
Right.
$9, right? And
Right.
then we set up a landing page on Kickoff Labs was the tool that we used for our Shopify store landing page.
Yeah.
And then we just started gathering emails around February. We did our first photo shoot in February 2018. The dirty secret is that those sheets were not our bed sheets in that very first photo shoot.
Right.
And then it's just, my hypothesis was they're just sheets.
Right.
People won't deal with them. And so our sheets were still in production and sampling. So
Right.
and then March we started running advertisements. In March and April, in those 8 weeks, we gathered 11,000 emails
Wow.
captured by voluntarily people giving them to us on our landing pages.
Wow. That's
And so
big time.
it was great. And we did that on such a low budget because we basically spent all in with the photography, and I wrote all the copy myself, every word of the copy. With the photography and the copy, we didn't use the video for anything other than the actual crowdfunding campaign. So we didn't even use the video for the landing page. So with just $500 plus maybe $50 on Kickoff Labs plus some time with me in copy, we built a landing page and then ran our first $1,000 of Facebook ads to it. So for $1,500, we got our first, probably about, I think, 1,100 emails.
Wow.
Or 12, and that first, week and a half of running these ads, people were asking questions in the comments section that we would engage with and start to build the brand voice. And the
Yeah.
first thing I ever did was a brand identity map back in October 2017. So I kind of knew how I would be responding to people as the company and as the brand. And we ended up gathering emails at a 45% conversion rate on that landing page, which is,
Wow.
blew me away.
Yeah, that's insane.
Crazy,
45%. Good grief.
crazy. No, and that was the first moment that I realized and I knew I was really onto something. And for anyone listening out there considering doing a crowdfunding campaign, the reason why you want to gather emails is because the way the crowdfunding math works, and I'm actually thinking about writing a white paper on this. The way
Sure.
that crowdfunding math works is you need, whatever your goal is, let's say internally you want to make $100,000, right? You have to make 30% of that on day one of that crowdfunding campaign. And so if you're going to try to make $100,000 over the course of the 30 days, you
Right.
need $30,000 on basically days, hours 24 to 72. You need to hit that $30,000 mark.
Yeah.
And so all of your initial day one sales are going to come from your email list. Your friends, your family, they won't even register as a blip. It's going to be all about your email list.
Yeah.
And so basically what we did is we broke it down. We said, okay, $100,000 goal, $30,000 on day one. We know our average order value is going to be about $100, which means that we need 300 customers on day one. And if we need 300 customers on day one and an email list reasonably converts at about 3%, then we need 10,000 emails to guarantee that performance on day one,
There you
period.
go.
End of story. And so that was, we put the blinders on. We had a $10,000 budget to get those emails. I think we ended up spending 9,000 of it. So we saved an extra 1,000 for the campaign.
Yeah.
And then day one, our email list ended up converting at 4.5%. And we got $45,000 on day one. And we were the number 2 trending project on IndieGoGo. And then that rolled into a nearly $300,000 crowdfunding campaign for bed sheets. Proudest thing I've ever done. Make thousands of people wait 5 months for bed sheets.
Yeah.
That's right. Proudest you. It was the biggest IndieGoGo crowdfund ever for the bedding category, which I'm very, and bigger than Brooklyn's Kickstarter as well. So I'm really happy about that.
Right. Well, that's interesting. My quick story on that with IndieGoGo. This is back in 2012. So a little bit, this is kind of the early
time
of that. The thing that helped me, I ended up putting a down payment on a commercial property that I did really well on here in Memphis, Tennessee, Colin.
Yep.
And what set it off was I didn't have near the intelligence like you just described. I was the biggest dummy on the block. And but what I did was I was just tweeting it like crazy. So I set up the IndieGoGo. You mentioned like the first 24 to 72 hours. I didn't do jack shit the first 20. I didn't do anything. It just sat out there like every other millions of IndieGoGos sitting out there. So I'm like, what the hell? So I just started tweeting it out and just being a dumbass. I was tagging
people, tagging people. Right.
I was doing crap like that, which now doesn't get you anywhere. But this was the
2012.
early days.
You could get Dwayne Wade to retweet you in 2012 if you said the right thing.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. So what happened was 2 guys. Roland Martin was big. So 2012, if you think about it, this was the presidential campaign. So this was,
Romney versus Obama.
Obama. So and Twitter had caught hold. So everybody had an opinion all of a sudden. And you could.
That's really worked out well for us, hasn't it? Over
right. Yeah, we saw how that grew. But it was so new because now anybody could sit in their boxers and have as big of opinion if they wanted to as a guy on Fox News or CNN. So what I was doing, I was catching these conversations and I was just, again, jackass. I'm just thinking, hey, this, this argument was brought to you by this, I was just doing stupid.
Yeah. I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
And so people were either laughing or they were retweeting it, and the algorithms hadn't really set in. None of these companies were public yet.
Right.
And so Shaq retweeted it. Shaquille O'Neal, who was an early guy, he was one of the first people to get like 1 million followers.
That's awesome.
So it really wasn't. I have no connection to the guy at all, other than being a fan of him. But I was peppering him with it, so probably just to tell me to shut the hell up. He retweets it. So so now all of a sudden you got 1 million people. Yep. And then Roland Martin was the big CNN contributor guy, during the election. So everybody's following him because they want to hear his opinion.
The news, sure.
And so then he retweets it. So those two guys, I ended up raising $15,000. I mean, but
sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's what you need.
Yeah. And so it was way more than my goal. But that's what it was. It was just that. So sometimes you just get
the brute force. Yeah. And so there's different ways to do it. I described a very methodical, way of doing it because what breaks my heart is, and I've actually, that's awesome that it worked out for you. What breaks my heart is when people, have a great idea, maybe they invested some time and energy and emotion into it.
Yeah.
And they go on Kickstarter and they put it out there. And like you said, it's one of potentially like 10,000 projects that launched on Kickstarter that day. And it just gets lost in the noise and then they post it on Facebook and it gets like 30 likes and then like 3 or 4 of their family members or friends buy it. And, does this. And then
Yeah.
once it does that, now the algorithms on Kickstarter and IndieGoGo punish those campaigns, the ones
Right.
that die early on.
Yeah.
And so the first couple days performance is so crucial. And then, it breaks my heart because I've even advised people where like, I've spent an hour with someone walking them through, what I think is a good strategy for their IndieGoGo or their Kickstarter. And I've told them like, hey, you're going to want to, make sure that you do this and that. And they don't. And
Yeah.
they're like, I've had somebody tell me like, they're like, oh, well, we've got like 2,000 followers on Instagram. So like, I think and I'm like, how much are you trying to raise? They're like $100,000. I'm like,
No.
you're going to convert like maybe like 20 of those people on Instagram. Like, and,
Right.
and people just don't want to look at the math when it comes to conversion and what it
Sure.
actually looks like. And
Right.
it frustrates me, it upsets me. I think that person ended up raising like $7,000 or whatever on like a $100,000 goal. Like, and it's anyway. I could go
Yeah.
on for a long time about crowdfunding, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yep, no doubt about it. And so,
yeah.
Colin, with Sheets and Giggles, so,
Hmm.
do you produce everything? I guess where is everything produced, and
Yep.
kind of who on your team's responsible for that quality control of how things are produced, and kind of unpack and walk us through that process of kind of A to Z, from raw material to
Yeah.
someone like me goes on and says, hey, I'm placing an order.
So on a high level, basically we grow our eucalyptus trees on sustainably managed farms that are biodiverse. So they have a bunch of different trees on them. We harvest eucalyptus trees from those farms. They're managed in coordination with an NGO as well to make sure there's no damage to surrounding environments or local populations. Those farms are in Canada, Sweden, South Africa, and India on rotation. So
Yeah,
we don't harvest any natural eucalyptus from Australia or anything like that. We get that
gotcha.
question a lot about koalas in Australia.
Sure.
Um, and we actually donated $17,000 to koalas last
Wow.
January in the wake of the wildfires. Anyway, so then the trees we turn into wood pulp via what's called a lyocell process. We do that in India. And it's considered the world's most sustainable fabric production process. It's a totally closed loop system where 99.5% of the chemicals that break down the wood are able to be reused in the very next batch of wood pulp production. So it's effectively zero waste. It's just wood in, fiber out, wood in, fiber out. That fiber dries and is treated and becomes like a very fluffy fiber, just like a cotton or polyester, although, cotton's not very sustainable and
Sure.
polyester is obviously made from petroleum.
Yeah.
And then that lyocell fabric is then weaved into yarn and into our sheets in a very highly automated process. Although we do have a couple dozen people that work on our manufacturing team in India. Love them all to death. We get them out to Denver pretty frequently and meet them in New York as well. And then I've flown out to India a couple times. The person responsible for all the QA and production and operations is my director of product and right-hand man named Mike, who is he's got 40 years experience in textile supply chain manufacturing, and he's been a total godsend and mentor and like I said, right-hand man for me since pretty much day one of the
Wow.
company. I got introduced to him early on by one of my folks in my network. I was looking for, I was just a kid 27-year-old kid who basically wanted to start a bed sheets company and didn't really understand textiles or manufacturing in that arena. And,
Yeah.
Mike, with his background, decades of textile manufacturing, was able to really, really, really help me deeply understand it. So by the time that we, began production in April of 2018, I had vetted a bunch of different manufacturing partners and factories and all over the world. And we're actually very hopeful to be able to open up an American-based production facility sometime in 2020.
Okay.
That plan's been jeopardized a little bit by this whole COVID-19 situation, but
Sure.
the lyocell process of turning trees into fabric, it's not a U.S. process. It was invented in Austria. It's something that's never been produced in the United States ever, and so I'm very excited to potentially be one of the first folks to do that. But as of right now, our design and prototyping and everything takes place in Denver and in Los Angeles, and then we manufacture in India. And I love everybody on my team, no matter where they reside. They're just we work with good people, man.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so
Yeah.
how has the pandemic, has it impacted your business at any point, I guess? I mean, I imagine obviously it's impacted us
That's yeah.
all, but
Mhm.
what's kind of been the level for you guys?
Well, in March, March was panic mode. March was
Sure.
bad. We had a 30% drop in sales. Everybody in consumer space did. Everybody, people,
Of
that was
course.
the week Dow dropped 30 points. It was like, you know,
Oh
um,
yeah, it was insane. Yeah.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. You were seeing deaths doubling every 3 days. The Dow dropped 35 points in a week. Like our sales were down 30%. Our supply chain, India, as a country, shut down on March 24th. We had prepared for that. Luckily, we had worked really hard to get inventory, for a few months, all loaded up. But still, we're out of King White on our website right now. We're out of other core items right now because we can't produce, and nor should we produce, because it's not safe right now. And so
Right.
everybody's on PTO at the plant. And it's going on 2 months now since we have had any production ongoing. But yeah, March 24th was a difficult day. We also had, we financed our inventory via credit, and we had letters of credit that we were expecting get unexpectedly pulled, and they called and they said, hey, this is just because of the COVID-19 situation. This has nothing to do with your business or the underlying financials. It's just we're very worried about everything going on. So the end of March, like the last week of March, was one of the most stressful weeks of my entire life. And luckily, I think that our team's focus, like I said earlier, on helping versus kind of making sure that we're like I've done a lot behind the scenes to make sure that the company is going to be good and going to be okay. But in terms of what the team has done, I told them all. I think March 19th, I made a video. I made a pledge. I said we will have no layoffs through this. I will not fire anyone through this. We'll do whatever we can to make sure that the S&G team stays whole.
Sure.
And I asked that question on Twitter. I asked, what's the number one thing that you want to hear from your manager right now?
Hmm.
And everybody said, just let me know if I'm going to have a job in 2 weeks or not. Like they were like,
Right.
just let me know, be honest with me and tell me where we stand. And I felt that from my team as well. My team is asking me, hey, my friends just got laid off at this great company, and my friend just got laid off here. So I could feel that pressure internally as well. And so I made that video. I decided to just go public and be like, and put that pressure on myself instead of making like an internal pledge that you could potentially renege on. I made a
Right.
public pledge that we weren't going to do any layoffs. And I think
Wow.
that what that did was it just took a huge mental load off of everybody's mind,
Yeah.
and it let my team refocus and regroup around how are we going to help, and then I told them, let me worry about all the stuff behind the scenes. I passed off a ton of my marketing duties, which are my favorite duties, to a woman on my team named Sarah, who's been fantastic stepping into this role of head of marketing, and I should have done it a long time ago. And I think that the combination of the work from home freedom, plus the ways that we're contributing to our community via our business success, which is a very galvanizing thing when you're not just hitting business goals, but you're able
Yeah.
to also hit these community goals, and that brings everybody together.
Absolutely.
The work from home freedom, and then the mental freedom of like, you're going to be okay, we're all going to be okay, like I'll take care of this. I think that's just been a really fantastic thing for the company. And so April, we responded very, very well.
Awesome.
Happily as well. I think a lot of people did in a lot of different industries as people kind of settled into a new normal. And
Yeah.
we haven't kept sight of like a lot of people are hurting right now in a lot of different ways. And so we're still very focused on like, how can we continue to help with the recovery as we start to see a bit of an opening up in Denver and other places. But
Yeah.
overall, it's been a very challenging time, man. And personally, I've gone through some stuff in the last month and a half that was very challenging
Sure.
for me. And I've had friends lose their fathers to this, and it's been
Yeah.
difficult. It's been a difficult time for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it definitely hate to hear that with, life transition related to this, that you've experienced kind of within your circle. And I certainly have, and many of you MYB that are listening to this have been impacted, personally and professionally and in some cases with illness and with death. And so we're definitely, very mindful of that. You know, Colin, as we kind of wrap up, because I know we're limited on time, man, and got a lot of things going on. But take me back to one of your toughest days. And I know you're going through. You mentioned challenge times
The
now.
COVID
Even
stuff,
through these
yeah,
challenge
yeah.
times, you guys are still, supporting the community, which again speaks very well of your culture and how you operate things. But take me back to one of your toughest days and how you overcome that. I think entrepreneurs and business owners have this innate peace within them that
Yeah.
allows them to keep going even when they hit obstacles. So what was that for you, if you can unpack that for us?
Well, I was actually just talking to I go to therapy every couple of weeks to work through some stuff, and
Sure.
I'm actually writing a piece right now on mental health that I hopefully is not too terrible.
Sure.
Imposter syndrome. But so basically, I think that the hardest thing for me was the hardest day was when I got laid off from my last company. I was 27. I had just spent 2.5 years of my life building this brand and this company that helped a lot of people. I mean, we, our wearable tech, we sent out like 60,000 emergency alerts, saved some lives. We know for sure. We had partnerships with all these big retailers and a pretty good national brand going, and it just didn't work out. And there's a number of reasons and lessons into that and why it didn't work out and why we had to lay everybody off. But when you get laid off from a company I wrote the original business plan to that company in 2013 as a 23-year-old kid with my friend who is the CEO.
Yeah.
And, when she walked in the room that day and had to let 20 people go, 20 people who I cared about and who myself included, and basically say, look, the company's wrapping up and here's what we have to do. And you'll get your last day's paycheck, but you're not getting paid through the week. And
Wow.
if you'd like your laptop, it'll be $500. And then having to navigate. I navigated. I didn't pay myself for 15 months after that. I basically I was on Cobra for 18 months, and I started an Amazon consultancy on the side to pay my rent while I started Sheets and Giggles. And
Yeah.
I made like $2,000 a month for maybe a year and a half before I started paying myself for this company. And now happily I feel very blessed to say I'm making more money than I have in my entire career.
Sure.
But that day was such a trigger point for me and such an emotional turning point in my life. And me and my buddy, we got laid off. You get laid off at 1 p.m. on a Monday. What's the first thing you do?
Right.
We drank.
You say you go to the bar.
We went. Yeah, no, we tossed them back, man. Me and my coworkers, ex-coworkers, and that was the first time. That was the first day that I told anybody about Sheets and Giggles. That was the first. I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna start my own. And it takes something like that, I think, to even somebody who's entrepreneurial, who wants to be their own boss, who wants to make their own decisions, who wants to be successful and change their life. I think that it takes something very traumatic and emotional like that, where you put a lot into something and see it crash and burn around you, and then it results in a lot of personal pain for yourself, to where you're like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna start a fucking bed sheets company. That's
right.
But and so that was definitely my toughest day, and I learned a lot from that company, and that's actually what led into the business model for S&G. I built my perfect business model. I built a product that fit into it. I had a sustainability mission, which I'm very passionate about sustainability, and I basically never looked back. About 3 years later, I incorporated, and ever since then, it's been kind of a core part of my life. And it's just weird where life takes you. You start your career 8 years ago at the world's largest hedge fund, and now I sell bedding on the internet. It's a lovely world.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a beautiful world, beautiful time, man. That's for sure. So,
Yeah.
Colin McIntosh, CEO of Sheets and Giggles. How can people get in touch with you, Colin? If they've got more questions, if, obviously, they can go to sheetsgiggles.com. Is that
Yeah,
right too?
I'm easy to find. Yeah, sheetsgiggles.com for the company. We're on Amazon as well. You can search for eucalyptus sheets or sheets and giggles, and you'll find us.
Yeah.
And if you just Colin Sheets, you're gonna find me.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I mean we're at Sheets Giggles everywhere. So just like the brand name, but no ampersand.
Yeah.
Same with the URL sheetsgiggles.com.
Yeah.
And then also I think my on LinkedIn, it's Colin McIntosh. I'm pretty easy, pretty accessible dude.
Yeah.
My inbox is like at like 3,000 unread, so
Yeah.
like
Yeah. So
usually on
calm down on the
email, but
inbox.
yeah, but I try to get back to people as often as I can. So
Yeah, there you go. So definitely, MYB, make sure that you get with that. Place an order. Go check out the product. I'm gonna be looking to do the same thing. So to support this business, who is also supporting the community. And so, Colin, listen, thank you so much, man. I know you've got a lot going on. You share some great content. Very rich, man. Very transparent and organic, which I
thanks,
love
man.
that. Love what you guys are doing with the company, and those are companies that we support, that are giving back organically in that fashion, man. So continue to do that, and I look forward to having you back on as you open the U.S. Facility,
I
and
can't I
that'd be
can't wait.
great.
I think we're gonna do our flannel sheets this year in a U.S. facility, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, so we'll look to have you back then, man.
All right, thanks, Ron. It's nice to meet
All
you, man.
right, appreciate it, Colin. Take care,
Cheers.
buddy. All right, all right. So that was Colin McIntosh with Sheets and Giggles. That's sheetsgiggles.com, where you can go and check that out. You can learn more about Colin, his background, as well as check out the product there for your bed sheets. And of course, all of us need that. Of course, a lot of us are spending more time at home, so probably need to update those bed sheets, no doubt about it. So listen, we are powered by the Binge podcast network. Shout out to everybody that's on the Binge, including our flagship show, the Startup Life podcast, which is hosted by Dominic Lawson, his great wife Kenda, and their entire team is doing a great job with the Startup Life podcast, and have been for many years. And as you know, that Dominic and the Startup Life is kind of the father podcast for the Minding Your Business podcast, the Big Brother podcast, I like to say as well. So shout out to them. Shout out to all of you. Go be great in whatever you do, and be positive. Remember, we all are united because there are three things we all aim for. We want to be better for ourselves, better for our families, better for our communities. Thank you again to Colin McIntosh. Sheetsgiggles.com is where you should go. Check us out, the MYB community, the THEMYB podcast.com is where you can check us out. If you're interested in launching your own podcast, you need to do that. Now's the time. Brandyourpod.com. That's brandyourpod.com for BrandPod. I will help you launch your own podcast platform, as well as be able to monetize that platform so that you can reach the audience that you want to reach. They're not all on your social media, so you can't rely on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok and all that to reach your audience, unless you like talking to the same people and over again. And if you do, that's fine, and you may find success in that. But if you want to find new audiences that are interested in what you have to say and what you're presenting, you've got to be more holistic in that. So listen, I'm going to sign off. Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast. Everybody go be great.